Okay, this is the companion lecture for Chapter 6 of Interrogating Popular Culture. It's this question of who makes or owns culture, and two competing versions of the answer to that question, one industrial, one more of a social or moral economy. By and large, the chapter is consumed with describing industrial techniques for making culture, so that's what we're going to focus most of the time on. First thing you need to know is that this is a business that is about money. As Michael Eisner, CEO of Disney, says, we have no obligation to make history, we have no obligation to make art, we have no obligation to make a statement. To make a profit is our only objective, and the we here is, of course, the corporations, right? Cultural industries, what we're going to call cultural industries. And this is really the mindset within those industries, though, this varies depending on who you're talking to. Executives are much more bottom line focused, creatives are much more interested in getting their vision to the screen or onto the record or etc., right? There's a lot of risk within these industries. These are some of the statistics that I give in the book. So there's a lot of failure. For every hit, there are 10, 15, 20, 100 failures. So to mitigate some of that risk, the industries have developed certain strategies. The first strategy is to go big. The second strategy is to shift the risk as much as possible, to play it safe in terms of the products you produce, and maximize exposure. Promote, promote, promote. Okay, so we're going to look at each of these in turn really quickly. Go big. When we talk about going big, we're talking about the tendency, particularly recently, for cultural industries to conglomerate, to get bigger by gobbling up nearby industries and producing monopoly relations within their corporate structure. All right, so if we look at one of these, this is a chart that shows the companies that dominate radio and TV production in the United States. We're going to look at one of these, which is Disney. Disney shows exactly the patterns of vertical and horizontal integration that we associate with conglomeration. Vertical integration refers to a corporation's desire to control an industry by owning all the subsidiary operations involved in that industry. So for cultural industries, this means owning production houses, distribution arms, and exhibition or retail outlets. And we can see that Disney has done this, right? They have studios, Disney Pictures, Touchstone, Hollywood Pictures, etc. They have distribution networks, including all of the television channels that they own, their magazines, internet outlets, etc. And they own exhibition or transmission outlets and retail stores, right? So they own TV stations, radio stations. They also own their own retail stores, right? So this enables Disney to produce a film and then effectively carry it through entirely in-house. So they can make the film in-house, they can distribute it with one of their in-house distribution arms, and they can show it then on their television stations or play the soundtrack on their radio stations. The horizontal integration refers to the way in which an industry buys up competing businesses that are cognate to their main business. So in Disney's case, we might say their main business is animation, right? Originally anyway, or film production. But they also own nearby industries, so they own radio, they own TV, they own magazines and book publishing. And the idea here is that you're going to create mutually beneficial business relations across your empire. This is called synergy, right? And so if Disney creates a hit movie, they also create the soundtrack for it, they write the book for it, they can advertise it in their magazines, they can sell toys related to it at their retail outlets, and they can show the film on their television networks. One effect of all of this conglomeration is that you have a few extremely large multinational multimedia corporations who control a lot of our culture. So in music, for example, Sony bought Bertelsmann, which was one of the largest corporations for recorded music in the world. And so Sony became even bigger, and the result was these two entities together controlled 25% of the global market for recorded music and 30% of the US market. So, 1 out of every 3 records you hear on the radio probably comes from Sony, right? So this leads to questions about whether this is good for the diversity of cultural production. Arguably, no. The 4 largest recording industry corporations, Sony, Warner Music, Universal Music, and EMI, account for 75% of the global market. So 3 out of every 4 pieces of recorded music that circulate on the global market come from one of these 4 companies. Right? Now, these 4 companies tend to prefer pop music and to try to create large hits like Lady Gaga, right, or something like that. So there's a lot of music that doesn't get picked up by a label, that doesn't get distributed broadly, but that is, completely competent and very interesting music. So this corporate structure, this emphasis on the bottom line, results in a kind of narrowing of the field of cultural production. And that's one of the things that political economists are particularly worried about with this strategy. Nevertheless, this is a viable strategy for dealing with competitive global market. If you get bigger, you make more profits. Right? So strategy number 1, go big. Strategy number 2, shift the risk as much as possible to the producers, to the artists. But the music industry is a really interesting case study here because they have mastered this art of shifting risk to artists. So this is a chart that illustrates who gets paid in a typical music industry contract. And you'll note that the label gets 63% of anything the band brings in. The band only gets 13%. Right? Distributors are those middlemen who bring the product to market, and they get a quarter of the profits. The band only gets 10 to 13%, really. Of that 10 to 13%, then, this is how it has to be distributed. They have to pay all kinds of upfront fees before they get any profits, and then they have to split the profits among all the band members and pay taxes, right? So this can actually result in a band going broke despite selling, 10 million copies of an album. All right, so Courtney Love does the math. I've put up a link to this article on the Blend Space. Take a look at it because she really breaks down how the contract works out and what they end up netting. I've also put up a clip from the PBS documentary Hitmakers, which describes the streaming video market. And we would think, ideally this is a way that young bands can break out and get some airplay, right, because they're locked out of the radio industry. But what happens is they're not compensated adequately for these. So you can we can access on Pandora a particular song 1 million times, and that band is only going to get a check for $13. Right? So this documentary will walk you through some of that, the dynamics of that. And this article by David Byrne goes through the various kinds of recording contracts that you can get in the industry, and which ones are more beneficial to the artists, which ones are less beneficial. So if you're interested in that, take a look at that as well. Strategy number 3, play it safe in terms of what you produce. Right? You as a corporation want to ensure that your products find a ready audience, and one of the ways that you do that is by using formula. You need to fit the new product into a genre. Genres help audiences identify the things that they might like out of the many, many options that they have. If it doesn't fit into a genre, it's a risk because audiences may not know what it is, and they may not go to see it or pick it up at the record store, assuming we even have those anymore, etc. Right? People like to be able to categorize things, and if they can't categorize it, they may not be interested in sampling it. Okay? So you have to fit it into a genre. If you put a star to it, this helps sell it, right? As the documentary that you're supposed to watch for this week notes, if you make a great movie and it doesn't have any stars in it, you're probably not going to make back your budget. But if you make a crappy movie and you put Tom Cruise in it, you're at least going to make back your budget, right? So stars can be very important to selling a commodity in a competitive market, right? Pre-sold commodities. This is a term that simply refers to the way that the industry makes new products based on old products, products that already have a proven track record. Right? So Shades of Grey was based on the successful series of novels. So we had a built-in audience already of fans of the novels who immediately flocked to the theaters to see the film. And that was a risk mitigation strategy, right? The people who made that film knew that those fans would come. And then if they could expand that audience, that's just bonus. That's gravy, right? All of these, remakes, sequels, spin-offs, clones, these are all different kinds of pre-sold commodities, right? You can base a film on a book, or you can remake a successful franchise. So if you remake a 1970s television show as a movie, or you remake a comic book as a movie, then that, again, brings that audience, that audience of fans comes automatically to your franchise, right? Sequels, if you have a successful film, make a sequel to it, right? Easy enough. Or a prequel, right? Tell the story before the story that was successful. Spin-offs, take a minor character and create a new text around that character. Better Call Saul on television right now is a spin-off of Breaking Bad, which was a very successful series for AMC. Clones, right? This is a TV Guide cover that suggests that The Family Guy is really a clone of The Simpsons. Well, it isn't, right? I mean, it's structured very much like The Simpsons. It's still a parody of a domestic sitcom in the way that The Simpsons is, but the humor arguably is a lot less sophisticated. Not less funny, just different. Right? But it does basically clone The Simpsons. Right? So all of these things are ways to reassure the audience of what your product is and help them find your product in a crowded marketplace. So play it safe. We end up with formulaic products, though, and there's no getting around that. Strategy 4, maximize your exposure. Promote, 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 promote. So, you have a new film starring Mike Myers as Austin Powers. That film is set in Britain at a certain moment. Tetley tea is a British tea competing with, American teas for the global market. So pairing these two things up, there's a kind of natural connection. Mountain Dew, very masculine brand image that's been cultivated with Mountain Dew and Doritos, arguably. And, of course, the primary audience for Call of Duty, the video game, is a young male audience, which is not to say those are the only people who play that game, but that's the brand image they have cultivated. So we have the kind of synchronicity among the brands, right? And they're hoping that people who drink Mountain Dew will also play Call of Duty. People who play Call of Duty might think about drinking Mountain Dew. Use your in-house arms to help cross-promote, right? So this is, you have this, Fox finances this film, Avatar. Huge, film a few years ago. Probably some of you have seen it. And then they used their television show Bones, which is where this picture comes from, to help advertise it. There's an entire episode. It's oriented around a couple of the scientists in the series getting tickets to see Avatar. So they're camping out to get tickets to see Avatar. And of course, one of the stars of Bones is in Avatar. So there's that cross-promotion as well. Finally, the Super Bowl, right? Pepsi sponsors the Super Bowl. Pepsi also sponsors Katy Perry. So Katy Perry does the halftime show at the Super Bowl. It's all this nice synchronicity there for Pepsi. Okay, so promote, promote, promote. One of the new ways in which they've tried to promote products is by co-opting word of mouth. Ideally, word of mouth is a stronger influence over people's decision making than any corporate produced advertisement. If your family member says to you that they think you might enjoy this film they just saw, you're probably going to trust them and you're going to go. If Pepsi tells you that this film was great, you might be a little skeptical, right? So there's a new dynamic called affective economics, which is designed to co-opt fan labor into corporately produced cultural products. Lady Gaga's a master at this, right? Her marketing teams have created what are called street teams of youth who are fans of Lady Gaga, and they're bribed effectively with tickets to the concerts, CDs, merchandise, maybe even a meet and greet with the star, and in exchange they go out and promote her as a brand. So they go out and they distribute bumper stickers and they give away CDs and they buy her singles on iTunes to drive it up the single sales chart and post videos of themselves dancing to her songs on YouTube in order to maximize the exposure for this artist in a way that other youth might find more trustworthy. But really this is a co-optation of free labor on the part of the corporation. They're getting the fans to do the work of promoting the star for them. So this affective economics is the new dynamic. Fandom uses terms similar to the corporate cultural industries in terms of the way that they think about their relationship to these commodities. Fans of Star Trek think they own the series. They think the characters are theirs. And that if the corporation does something they don't like, that it's equivalent to violating the copyright. And so they'll use these words, ownership, take ownership over the characters. And they'll think about their relationship as a love relationship, but also as an investment, right? They mean that word investment a little bit differently than the commercial cultural industries do, right? They don't mean it the same way Michael Eisner means it. Nevertheless, they use those words. And so the last part of the chapter really talks about these two different ways of thinking about terms like industry, value, ownership, right? And the ways in which fan communities often work at cross purposes to corporate commercial logics. So think about that. This little graphic here is designed to, it's produced by a fan of heavy metal music, right? And it illustrates one of the problems with the commercial music industry is the commercial music industry is interested in pop hits. They're interested in selling as many records as possible, and they don't think there's a huge market for heavy metal. They think it's too white, too working class. It's not going to be globally popular. Fans have proved them wrong. Fans have taken that music all around the world, and it is now a global phenomenon. I mean, you can find heavy metal bands in Iraq and Syria, in Brazil, in Norway. They're everywhere. But it was the fans who spread the music, not the corporations who have habitually underinvested in heavy metal music. And so this is, where the corporations do invest is in boy bands. One Direction. They love boy bands. But the snide comment here is, let's look at the number of fans that One Direction actually has. People who genuinely love that band versus people who genuinely love Iron Maiden. So a different measure of investment. All right, so watch the documentary, The Monster That Ate Hollywood. You have a quiz over that. Take a look at the links on the Blend Space page. Your essay, first essay, is due the 15th. Don't forget, that's right before you take off for spring break. If you haven't started work on that yet, you need to start on it now. If you have questions, you can email me or come to my virtual office hours on Monday and Tuesday. All right, bye.